This episode of Around the Oval is brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage.
Welcome to the Scoop World Order. No, I'm just kidding.
I love it.
We do have Kirk Barton, host of the Scoop World Order here. This is another episode of Around the Oval brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage, though. And we bring the man, one of the godfathers of Buckeye Scoop, former Ohio State All-American offensive tackle, Kirk Barton, into the house to talk a little offensive line for Ohio State. As you know, we're just a day ahead of media days, Big Ten media days, and just a couple weeks ahead of fall camp. Kirk, my man, thanks for joining the show. How's everything going?
It's awesome, man. Shout out Todd Pennington. He re-upped with us. He did my mortgage, did a great job with Revolution Mortgage. So thank you, Todd, for re-upping with the Scoop. And Alex, Matt, I want to thank you. Your content's awesome. That A-Deck today was amazing. You always put out great stuff. So I just had to give you a little plug. I think that your stuff's amazing. So appreciate you having me on, my man.
Appreciate you, Kirk. And yeah, definitely anyone who's looking for a mortgage for a new home or looking to refinance their current home, definitely hit up Todd Pennington. You'll see the information right under our beautiful faces as this video is playing. But as we said, we're just a couple weeks out from Ohio State fall camp. Really exciting. A lot of position battles. Obviously, quarterback. We're gonna all have our eyes on the quarterback battle, and then some in the secondary, linebacker. There's definitely a few spots open. But one of the, I think, to me, the less talked about positions where I think just people feel good about the talent that's going to fill those spots no matter what. But they lost Wyatt Davis. They lost Josh Myers. Harry Miller had kind of an up and down year. He played through some injuries, so it's kind of unknown I think he might be playing a new position too. So you kind of call it three open spots on the interior of Ohio State's offensive line. And then you obviously have, the two guys managing the ends, Thayer Munford on the left side, Nick Petit-Frere on the right side. So it's really an interesting group to me because you have two solids for sure guys. And then you have three kind of, you feel good about who might take those spots, but you don't really know, who's gonna actually win those spots in fall camp. So what I want to do is talk first about the two tackles that we do know are going to have their spots, Thayer Munford and Nick Petit-Frere. And Kirk, I mean, these guys had excellent years. And I know you watched the game probably a little bit differently than the rest of us having played the position. You probably focus on that offensive line a little bit more than the general fan does. So tell us a little bit what you saw from those two guys last year that you thought they did well and where you expect them to make a leap kind of going into their, Thayer's fifth year, Nick Petit-Frere's fourth year, which will make them even better for this Ohio State offense.
I think they're both outstanding pass protectors. I mean, Thayer gave up 0 sacks last year as left tackle at Ohio State, which is very difficult to do. I think that, him coming back was a wise move just because he can put his nagging back issues from 2 years ago further into the past. He can have, 2 seasons in a row of knock on wood of healthy, productive film, which I think is important. I think that he can continue to just keep getting stronger. I think that he's still, getting better, which is good. But and Nick came out of the scene last year and I thought he was fantastic. He's super athletic. In my opinion, he could play more physical. He could finish better. Again, his pass protection is going to make him a lot of money in the NFL, but he's a dream of a kid. He wants to intern at McKinsey. I mean, he's like that kind of kid. Like he's like the best consulting firm in the world. So he's a different cat compared to a lot of the kids you run into in the Ohio State locker room. And he's an easy kid to root for because he has a lot of pride. He's super talented. And I think he can make a substantial leap this year because Thayer's also getting stronger in the weight room, more confident. They're expected to have big years, and they need to deliver on that. That's the biggest thing. Is when you're coming back as a senior and Thayer will likely be a captain. Is you want to make sure that you have that big contract year, that big senior year. Like Thayer's obviously he's not gonna have another year after this one. He's gonna be gone, and Nick wants to have that option that if he wants to go pro, he has that option as a fourth year guy, and it would be prudent for him to consider it. I mean, because I think that he's going to be ready for the NFL. He's the same age as Jackson Carman, who's going to start at guard for the Bengals this year, and another year of seasoning under his belt, and he could get drafted higher than Jackson Carman did.
Yeah, absolutely. I have zero worries about those two guys as long as they stay healthy. I think they're all American, all Big Ten type of players. And,
Mhm.
I guess now you talk about the interior. And before we get into, who those guys, in your opinion, are going to be, what'd you win your job in 2004 is when you
Yeah.
started for the first time?
Yeah. So in '04, I missed spring ball. I had a shoulder surgery. So I was out for first couple weeks of spring. I came back, like the second week of spring, sprained my ankle on like the fifth day of practice that I was back and missed the spring game. So I didn't start the year in '04 as a starter. So I was behind Tim Schafer, kept working through camp, kept working through the season. And then by like game 4, I came on as the starter. Or our starter got beat pretty badly. We're playing Wisconsin. We're playing Erasmus James, who's a first rounder, who's unbelievable. And he beat Tim Schafer so bad the first 3 series that literally they're like, you got to go in. Someone else we have to try somebody else, because he gave up like 2 sacks and 2 tackles for a loss. I mean, it was like, I was watching this guy, and I mean, Schafer wasn't touching the guy. So, of course, they put me in there, and I'm like scared to death because this guy is the best end in America. And I was able to hang in there. I mean, it wasn't pretty, but I didn't give him any sacks. It wasn't but I mean, I was blocking the best guy in the country, and it was just basically playing basketball against him and trying to keep him, keep him free. But and then I started after that because I was able to at least hang in there against the guy.
Yeah. See, I mean, you didn't have the traditional kind of going into fall camp competing for the spot like these guys did, but you did go into the season competing for a job, and you have competed, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, every year after that you had to compete to keep your spot, right? So
Yeah.
what's the mindset of, there's a lot of guys in this mix. There's Matt Jones, there's Harry Miller, there's Paris Johnson, there's Luke Whippler, there's DeJuan Jones, there's Enoch Vimahi. I mean, there's a lot of guys. Ryan Jacoby. What is this guy? What are these guys' mindsets heading into fall camp? I mean, they obviously have their spring, they have their summer conditioning, and they're able to work out with the coaches for X amount of hours a week. What is their mindset heading into fall camp?
I think you win the job by any means necessary. I mean, that's how I was. I mean, there was nothing on the earth more important than winning a starting spot. I mean, you don't want to be a guy that is on the bench and you have to wonder when you're going to go in, if you're going to go in, if this guy gets hurt, do I get to go in? Like, you want to be, as soon as, we win the coin toss and we're getting the ball, like, that you're on the first play of the game after the kickoff. Like, that's what you want. And it's, I mean, if it means more time in the weight room to get stronger, more time in the film room, more time conditioning, eating better, whatever you do in camp, you got to mentally be tough, and you got to realize, okay, it's the 5th day of training camp. My 5th day has to be better than any of my competitors' 5th day. It's the 7th day of training camp. We're all hurt. We're all sore. We all feel terrible. We're all depressed because, we're in the hotel and we're not at home and we don't see our girlfriends and we're eating camp food or whatever, like whatever it is. Like, you got to mentally be like, I have to overcome that, and I have to be the best guy there is, and you have to lock in every day, because that's the thing about Ohio State, man, is like, if you take a day off of practice, you're gonna get embarrassed. Like, and that was like something that I loved about it, because it was literally, it was as bad as it was. You get the same anxiety as a game because you're going against Vernon Golston, you're going against Will Smith, you're going against Cam Hayward, and it's like, if you want to take a day off, I mean, it's a painful experience. I mean, you're going to get murdered by the guys you go against, and that's how it is at Ohio State. And that's what, whoever ends up shaking out, if it's Harry Miller at center, Harry Miller at left guard, I feel very confident that Paris Johnson will open at right guard. I'm very confident. So whoever ends up winning, I know that they'll have been through the mill. They'll have gone against Haskell. They'll have gone against, Jerron Cage, Teron Vincent, those guys on the inside. They'll go against our defense, or, the blitzes and pass protection deals. Like, they'll be ready to go. I mean, Josh Hart played a lot of left guard at spring, and I think he had a really nice spring. So, I mean, that's a guy that I don't think it's talked about enough, frankly, because I could see him opening at left guard, Harry at center, and Paris at right guard. Put a gun to my head and said, who do you think, if you had to bet on who sub would roll out there if you had a game tonight, it'd probably be that fivesome.
So who's your 3?
I mean, right now I would say Josh Hart at left guard, Harry at center, and then Paris at right guard. Like if you put a gun to my head, just based on what I saw in the spring, how the reps shook out. I think Matt Jones is close. I think that he has some maturity issues sometimes, some reliability issues, just from people I talk to in the program. Like I talk to everybody in the program. So, like when I say something, there's usually some good reasoning behind it. And and then there's Enoch's a tackle. I mean, he's kind of stuck behind the two big guys, but him and Dewan, I mean, honestly, I'd love to see Dewan get a crack at left guard and see if he can hang in there and do it. But things at guard happen really fast. Sometimes you're at tackle, it's tougher because you're going against a better athlete. Defensive ends are always better athletes than defensive tackles, but you get to play in more space. You have a little bit more room. I guess things happen a little bit slower at tackle than they do at guard. Like at guard, you got guys on both sides. You got to be able to switch combinations from defensive tackle stunts and DN stunts and blitzes, and and our pass protections are pretty simplistic, so it's not really that big of an issue. But everything does happen quicker at guard. This is part of the deal. So but I'd love to see Dewan. I mean, all these guys want to play guard now because the tackles are basically written in ink. So these guys don't want to sit for another year. And Thayer coming back is like Chris Olave coming back. All of a sudden, it's like a guy. All these guys are thinking, all right, this guy's going to be off the NFL. I'm going to get my spot next year, and then all of a sudden, COVID happens, and they get a magical extra year that no one was counting on them getting. And that could be mentally tough for some of these guys because you're thinking, well, that spot's going to open up. Like I can imagine if Shane Olivia would have came back for a 5th year somehow. When the best part about me going to Ohio State when I did is that I was the only lineman they took, and everybody was graduating after the year that I redshirted. So they're going to be like 4 open spots. So it was perfect, basically. And that's if Shane would have came back, it would have sucked. I'd have been devastated. I want to beat him out.
Kind of crazy. Recruiting's so different then than it is now, but it's kind of crazy. You're the only offensive lineman, and it kind of shows why that 2014 maybe wasn't so great out the gates. The fact that you had all those guys leave, and who were you? I mean, you had one guy in your class. I mean, you should have had more guys in your class, right? Like,
well, the problem is like, I don't know if we would have taken 5 guys. The guys that were recruiting all ended up sucking, and they were 5-star guys. Joel Haller was a 5-star guy that went to Penn State. He's terrible. Never played it down at Penn State. They took a couple of kids that went to the Hurricanes. They were terrible. I've never played it at Miami. So it's like they could have taken 5 of the guys they were recruiting, and none of them would have played. And they were all 4- and 5-star guys by Rivals and Scout.com, but they stunk. So I don't know. I think 04 was kind of a perfect storm where we were young up front on offense and defense on both lines. We weren't good, and we ran into some really good D lines. Like, I mean, the best D lines I played against my entire career were in 04. That's better than anyone we saw in 05, 06, 07 by far. So it was kind of like, it's like one of those things where sometimes when you're the young team, you run into the veteran team, and it doesn't end up well.
Yeah, for sure. And look, you guys matured as the year went on and finished the year pretty strong, which obviously led to momentum into 2005, which that team to me is one of the best Ohio State teams I've ever personally seen. By the end of the year, I thought you guys could have beat anyone in the country. Should have beat Texas. But
and happy birthday to Troy Smith's birthday today. I wish you would have played the whole Texas game.
Yeah, that probably would have been good, but you guys still should have won the game. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I see it. I see Harry at center. I do see Paris at right guard. I'm gonna go with my guy Matt Jones at left guard. Yeah. I'm just from what I'm hearing, I think I gotta. Those guys don't BS me. The Brooklyn guys when they tell me Matt's gonna start, they wouldn't sugarcoat it. They told me the things that you said. They have told me that in the past, the maturity stuff that, he was been in and out of the doghouse. He needed to grow up. He needed to become more accountable, all those things. Like they were honest with me and they told me that. And I think, I know he's had a really good offseason. I know he's worked really hard. He did work some at center. I know that that's still a possibility is how do the pieces all fit in. He wanted to show that, he was still versatile and that he could do it all. So it will be interesting to see how that shakes out in fall camp. But the last thing I want to talk about before I let you go, Kirk, and you mentioned it. I mean, we mentioned all these guys and Josh Fryer is one I forgot. I mean, they're legitimately like 10 deep on the offensive line, in my opinion. I feel pretty good about, I think the second line for Ohio State could probably be the starting offensive line for what is there, 14 Big Ten teams, probably at least 10, if not 11 or 12 of the Big Ten teams. I think Ohio State's second line could probably start for. How do you feel about the depth of the offensive line this year in general? And then, in comparison to, the years we've seen, since Urban Meyer, I guess, came into Columbus.
I think that it's as deep as we've had, and that's even with Max Ray transferring to Colorado. Because he would have been our number 4 tackle. But I mean, if you look right now, our 2 backup tackles are Dewan and Enoch, and those are 2 heralded guys. I mean, Dewan flirted with going to Florida in December, and I don't think there was any coincidence that popped up magically with Jason Higdon's site when Thayer Munford decided to come back. All of a sudden, like, I think Dewan might have gotten a little skittish and wanted to look around a little bit because he thought he was going to start at left tackle this year. Now there might be another year on the bench, and he's been here for 3-4 years, and it's time to start playing. Inside, is it going to be Matt Jones on the bench? Is it going to be Fryer on the bench? You still talk about Luke Wimpler, who played some with the ones in the spring. I mean, back in the day, even in 2012, it was like, if we lost one guy, if one guy got hurt in 12, Taylor Decker's coming off the bench as a true freshman, and he wasn't the $80 million Taylor Decker at that point. So, I had a strange run in 2007 and 2006. In 2007, we didn't have a single O lineman get hurt the entire year. All 5 guys started every single game. Like, that never happens, but it happened in 2012 too, which was amazing. But there's sometimes where it's like, you wonder, like, if a certain guy gets hurt and that next guy goes in, it is really bad. Like in 2006, Alex Boone was out for a couple of games. We put Shafe in, and it was just really, really bad. He started the Michigan game, and it was really bad. So, I think if something happens to Thayer, he breaks a shoestring, and we put DeWand in, it won't look like vomit, which is important. That's what people don't get, man, is like you're razor thin from being a really good O-line to not being very good if you lose a couple of guys. But I think Ohio State could actually weather the storm better than almost anybody in the country, because it is tough. These guys get rolled up on, they get hurt in practice, they get concussions, and you got to have some guys ready to go, because these seasons keep getting longer. If they're going to go to a 12-team playoff, man, the depth of your O and D line is going to be really imperative to that long stretch of football.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that the interesting thing for me is the versatility of some of these guys. So you have a guy in Paris Johnson who, if a tackle got hurt, maybe Paris bounces outside, and maybe they're going to get the best 5 on the field. However that happens. I think people don't realize it's hard when you've only been practicing at right guard for so many weeks to just go and play right tackle or go and play left tackle, right? Like, it's not that easy.
Yeah. And it just comes down to how much do you want to jumble everything up? Like, do you want to shift 2 guys around, or do you just want to put DeWan in a left tackle?
Right.
Do you want to put, PJ out at left tackle and then put another guy in at right guard? If you can, like, keep, the other 4 guys in the same spots for cohesion, and then you just throw DeWan in or Enoch in or whoever, that usually makes it easier, just because there's only one little bit of chemistry that gets kind of screwed with, as opposed to switching a bunch of guys around to make it all fit. If you're thin, sometimes you got to switch everybody around because you don't have enough depth to be able to do that. But I don't think that's the case with this team. And again, it's a credit to Stud in our recruiting, because, we've got guys that are just really good looking kids. Like we've had guys in the past where, we had 8 guys in the room that couldn't play. And now it's like we might have like 2 or 3. That's a big, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's a huge deal when you have, 10 guys that can legit play in the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. And, I think that when you talk about just being able to put one guy in and not jumble guys around and swap 2 guys and add one and things like that, this team has the ability to just plug one guy in and be fine. Like, you're confident with DeWan Jones going in, you're confident with Enoch Vimahi going in, you're confident with Luke Whippler coming in. So I think that is a huge deal to have potentially 10 deep, maybe even more. I don't know how they feel about Ryan Jacoby. They'll find out in fall camp this week. So, with that said, last thing, and then I'll let you go. Truly last thing. you mentioned a lot of good defensive ends that you went against in practice. Obviously, a bunch that you went against in games. Who was the best player, practice, or game that you ever went one-on-one with at tackle?
You know, it's so funny because I mean, this is Erasmus James, the guy I went against in my first game, because the week before we played them, you can look this up. In 04, they played Penn State. He sent Michael Robinson to the hospital, and he knocked Zach Mills out of the game. Like, he literally knocked both quarterbacks out of the game. Sent one of them to the hospital. One of the other of them literally got in the ambulance like on Madden 93 and went to the hospital. And I was like, he's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft, top 5 pick in the draft. He was an All-American, and he played Purdue. You can look this up. Purdue hit him with the dirtiest high-low I've ever seen in football and really ruined his knee. And he was never the same. He got drafted first round by the Vikings, but he just never, he was a shell. I mean, it was like they hit him. It was like something in like a football movie. You know, they hit him with the dirty high low, and he was never the same. And I mean, I went against, you know, the only guys that I ever had issues with were first round picks. So it's not, you know, I went against, you know, obviously the Florida guys were both first round picks. The guy from LSU is the number 3 overall pick.
Tom Bahali.
Yeah, Tom Bahali was a first round pick. Mario Williams was the number 1 overall pick. Trent Cole played forever with the Eagles. You know, in 04, man, I mean, Matt Roth was a 2nd round pick. He was really good at Iowa. You know, I mean, Northwestern had a couple. I mean,
Iowa, Claiborne, right? You went against Claiborne?
I did not go against Claiborne.
He was right after. He was right after you. He was.
Yeah. I had Roth, who was really good. I mean, Roth played in the league probably for 6 or 7 years.
And Kerrigan was after you too.
Kerrigan, I played against him when he was a freshman, but he wasn't anywhere near
that doesn't
as good.
count.
I thought Kerrigan was really good. I went against Cliff Averill.
That's right.
He played at Seattle. I went against Ray Edwards in 04. Anthony Spencer was a first round pick. I mean, you play a lot. I mean, it's
Texas had to have a couple guys. Yeah,
well,
for sure.
See,
Florida, obviously.
You know, Texas's guys weren't really as good as I thought they'd be. Like, Tim Crowder got a lot of hype, and Brian Robeson played like 12 years in the league, but he wasn't that good. Florida's guys were good. Harvey, I went against Harvey more than Moss. I thought Moss was better because he was more slippery. He had more moves. Harvey's just a straight bull rush guy. And I mean, he had 3 sacks, but like the one time he beat Rory Nickel didn't even get out of his stance. I was actually going to break all these sacks down from the Florida game, because the one time Roy doesn't get out of his stance, the other time he bull rushes Antonio Pittman into the quarterback. And like the one time Roy doesn't get off the ball. And then the one time he bull rushes me, but I stopped him. And then Troy actually apologized to me this. He just goes scrambling like out of the pocket, and he gets brought down. And I'm like, dude, like if you like leave the pocket, like I can't block him if you're not in the pocket. Like, I don't know where you're going. So it's, you know, like when you're creating a pocket as an offensive line, you do it based on where the quarterback's supposed to set up, not where he scrambles around to. And he apologized. But I mean, you know, Troy, he was an improviser, and that's why he was great, is because he could make throws on the run and whatever. And it was just weird. Like, but I thought Moss is better than Harvey. I didn't think Tyson Jackson was very good, because he ran like a 5.140. Then Scott Pioli drafted him 3rd overall, which is insane. And he never did shit in the NFL.
Did Dorsey ever line up over you, or he was just only inside?
You know what's funny is, like, there was this one play in the LSU game, I'll never forget it, where we ran a tackle over set where Boone was playing. He was playing tight end, and I was playing like the inside tackle. But no, I was playing tight end and he was playing the inside tackle. And I literally had like a one-on-one block against Dorsey, and I like shoved him all the way down the line. I was like, holy shit, this is a great block. And I was like, if you lock in on him and you just get a stalemate at that tight end block, it's always going to be, we needed a yard. We're on the 1 yard line. And like, I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be a great block. We're gonna score a touchdown. And then all of a sudden I look back and like, we lost like 6 yards. And I'm like, what happened? And like Jimmy Cordell got literally picked up by Ricky Jean Francois and thrown into Beanie Wells. It was the most unbelievable play. I mean, he picked Jimmy up like he was an infant and just threw him into Beanie. And
Jimmy played in the NFL.
Yeah, I know.
He's no slouch.
Dude, it was insane. And I'm sitting there, because like, like when you get a good block and they're running right behind you, you're like, okay, we're about to score here. And then all of a sudden I look back at the LSU, people are going nuts, and our side of the stadium's like, what's going on? And I've got that play. I got to break that play down. I was like,
I was gonna say you should do like a game watch of both of those games and just live
Oh, dude,
narrate it, and then
dude,
also break it down. I would hate
I
to relive it, but I think fans would
I
kind of
have
like that.
I have the Florida film. I mean, I have the whole like all 22 tape of like everything that went wrong. And I was like, it's like, do I want to do that? I mean, part of me wants to do it with like Urban, like have Urban do it with me, and then we'll sit and because I've got a telestrator, and you could live cast it and have like a little chat go on. I mean, just yank the band-aid off permanently. But
Yeah, that would be
you know.
fun. I wouldn't want to
Oh,
relive it, but I kind of would, So
Well, I think the biggest things, I don't think people want to relive it. They just want to know like what the F happened. Like, so you don't have to bleep everything out, but it's like, 'cause that's the one game. Like, it's like we've gotten blown out by Bama in the championship. We got blown out by Clemson, but the one game that sticks in everybody's butt forever is the Florida game. And it's like, and I don't know.
It was
I
just
think
such a shock, I think, to the
that's
general
exactly
fan base,
well, that's what it was. And like we had this little thing in our heads where we're like, oh well, we beat the Hurricanes at the Fiesta Bowl wearing white jerseys. Then we beat Kansas State at the Fiesta Bowl wearing white jerseys. Then we beat Notre Dame at the Fiesta Bowl wearing white jerseys. We're the number one seed. Oh, let's wear our road jerseys. Let's wear our white jerseys again. Let's stay at the same hotel. Then we show up and we just get slaughtered. And like our best player breaks his leg. The guy that played in the NFL longer than anybody on the field that night just retired 2 days ago. And and just like everything goes wrong. And it was like, the first play of the game, we're like, all right, we're good. And then it was just like everything that could go wrong went wrong. And it happens. So I tell people, I was like, man, if you're in football, you're going to have one of those games. Like Nick Saban had it against Clemson. Nick Saban's first game when he was at Michigan State, he played Nebraska in 95 and lost like 65-10. And he thought he was the worst coach in America and they're going to get fired. And turns out like Nebraska was really good in 95. The best team in the maybe of all time. But it's it's one of those things where people they still don't know what happened in that game. They're still shell shocked, and it's been 15 years, and we literally took Florida's coach from them, and Florida literally has been garbage ever since we took Urban from them. And so that's like one of those games where like I really do want to kind of break it down. I think people would enjoy that.
Yeah, for sure. I know I would, but
I do a live chat and have we'll burn something in effigy just to get it out of our souls forever.
Exactly. It could kind of be the closure we all need. But yeah, Kirk, my man, thanks for joining the show. Always a pleasure. Really appreciate it. And I know the bank and Dom are waiting for you to record your next one, so we'll let you bounce. And thanks everyone for listening.
Hey, thanks, man. You're awesome. Keep killing it, Alex.
This episode of Around the Oval was brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. If you've been thinking about refinancing or buying a house, check out our sponsor, Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. They offer low rates for refinancing and home purchase loans, including first-time home buyer programs, down payment assistance, and cash-out home equity loans. Check out revolutionmortgage.com/tpennington.